Hello and welcome to week 3 of how to start a board game company from Off the Page Games. I'm Jay Cormier. This week we're going to start looking at what you have to do when interacting with a manufacturer, like a printer. I'm going to be using one in China, and let's start talking about what I've been doing so far. So first you have to find one. So this is a process that I had to do when I was dealing with my Fail Faster journal. Called around, got some quotes from different manufacturers, and there's tons out there, very reputable ones that you might want to deal with. Longpack and Panda, and I ended up going with Gameland for my journal, and this is also the manufacturer that Burnt Island Games is using for one of my games coming out called In the Hall of the Mountain King. So I kind of went with at least there's some repute there, they're reputable, I guess. You definitely go with a manufacturer that has a link somewhere, some recommendation, some connection to somebody that has used them. That's my recommendation. And then after that, you get connected with them and we start the process. Now, I'm way too early to start getting quotes to specifications because I don't even know the size of my components and whatnot. But I have a connection and now we're ready to go. So the first thing that I'm already starting to think of is trying to figure out, well, what's the size of my board going to be? And what's the size of the box going to be? And it was a chicken and the egg thing for me. I was actually kind of confused about which comes first. Like, do you decide the size of your box and then make sure all your components fit in it, or do you kind of figure out, well, how big of a board do you want, and so therefore how big of a box do you need? And I don't know if there's necessarily a correct answer for that, because I think both have their approaches that make sense depending on the game and depending on what you're doing. But one thing I did ask was to the manufacturer was, is there a custom box sizes available? Obviously, but is there a box sizes that they already have kind of pre-made and pre-fabricated or preset in their systems, and therefore would be cheaper than making a very custom-sized box? When I'm dealing with Gameland, they said, no, they don't. You can make it whatever you want. I'm like, okay, that's good. And then I asked a second follow-up question, which I thought, ooh, I'm clever here. What about your boxes or crates or whatever you call them, in which these games get packed into? What size are those boxes? Because I don't want to create a game that is like, a few millimeters too big and I can't fit one extra box in there. So I thought I was being clever, but they out-clevered me again at Gameland because they actually make those boxes specific to your game as well. I'm like, oh, okay. So everything is custom at Gameland, but definitely ask your manufacturer what they have available, because maybe it's just cheaper for you to get a very specific size that fits with one of their molds, or maybe not. So now it's back to me. I'm like, okay, what size should I want? Well, seeing that all my games are going to be based off of comic books, I'm like, I wondered if the size of a comic book, if that kind of proportion, that ratio would make sense. So I'm going to take us into the my art program right now, and we'll take a look. Now, the art program I happen to use is CorelDRAW, which some people make fun of me for using, which is, hey, that's too bad. I like it. It's a program I started using a long time ago, and I'm familiar with it and comfortable with it, so that's what I use. I tried to use Illustrator, and the learning curve was very high for me. So here is the aspect ratio of a comic book. It's 168 millimeters by 257 millimeters. So as long as I can make it as big or as small as I want. And I thought when I looked at this, I'm like, that looks like a very tall board game box. I thought it looked too tall. So I thought, well, maybe if I just use Belfort as a sample, maybe this is a better size. And I thought, yeah, that still looks kind of like a comic book size-ish bit. The comic book is taller than Belfort. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just use Belfort as that. So that's pretty interesting. So I thought, okay, let's go with that for my box size. It seemed like it looked like a nice size for me, and kind of still represented a comic booky kind of feel to it. Then if that's my box size, the next thing is my board. Now my board is a rectangular shape, which I'll show probably in a future episode as we get into more details about that. Each manufacturer has this, and I'm having to use Panda because Panda is a great publisher, but they have this really cool thing called a template generator, and I'll show you where I found it, they have a design guidebook with tons of cool information about how to print and all the things that they require from a manufacturer. This is great. And so, for example, a two-piece game box, which a lot of companies use, they have a requirement your box has to be at least 15 millimeters larger in each dimension than your largest component to make sure that each component can be easily removed. You don't want it to just be exactly the size and you just kind of slide in. You'll never be able to get it out, right? So that's interesting. Okay, so and the plus on top of that, they need another 3 millimeter bleed, but that's just bleed, so that's fine. Okay, so that was interesting. But what they also have here is to ensure your proper dimensions. Here is a generator, and I'm like, oh, cool. So they have a generator for all sorts of things: two-piece box, game board, all this kind of stuff. So you can go two-piece box, your custom size, and I could enter in, what was my custom size? It was 220 by 295. This is length of 295, 220, and the width, the length, and the height. Oh, I don't know. This is I have no idea what the height will be right now. 7 millimeters. Oh, and interesting. They can even do, depending on the thickness. Start with 1.5. Maybe that'll be a stretch goal to upgrade that, and it generates a template. And boom, you get an actual template with all of the bleed. Look at this. There's the size right there. There's a wraparound 15 millimeters plus a bleed of 3 millimeters. And this is the safe zone here, and it shows where all the folds are going to be. That's pretty, and that's just page 1, and then page 2 is over here. Like page 2 being the bottom of the box. I even think it says that right there, box bottom. Really cool template. Fantastic job, Panda. So thanks for adding a lot of value to this. So that was cool. And so then if this is my box size and I need to be 15 millimeters smaller on each side, let's just change, I'll just duplicate this so I have one for future if I need it. Just go 15 millimeters, so 220 is 205, and let's do another 15 millimeters here, so that's going to be 280. Just enter, boom. So now this is, obviously my board is going to be bigger than this, but if you go back to this generator, you can see here that for a game board, you can enter your length and width. And mine was, I could, if I wanted to go about this way, but what I want to show here was that they have how do you want to fold it? Just in half, a third, a fourth, or 6. And I think to get the biggest board, I think I'm going to fold it in 6. So now this, as you can see, I'll even color it differently, is smaller. So 15 millimeters smaller, meaning you get your fingers in there and get this board out of the box. And I'm going to do a 6-fold, so I'm just going to use my program here and duplicate this, and now this is the size of my board, and it'll fold up in 6 pieces. That's pretty handy. I kind of like that process. Maybe there's a better process to do it, but this now, for those that are not metrically inclined, let's see what this equals as a board. It equals 24 inches by 22 inches. So a nice size board, like a pretty decent sized board. You can Google online what the average size boards are for all sorts of different games to get a comparison of how yours lines up. But this feels about right. I've been playtesting with about an 18-inch board, and it definitely feels small and tight, and it's going to allow the artwork to be shown off a lot more, which I will get to in a future episode. So that's pretty much step 1 for me, and now I can give that information to my artist, work with these constraints, and obviously make it scalable. So obviously make it a lot bigger so that we can scale down, and because it might be still within a few millimeters of this. I have no idea if this will be exactly what it is as we grow forward, but I think so, but we'll see. All right, so that's my first step of what I've been doing with trying to figure out with my manufacturer, what do I do first? And that is getting the box done and the board. Now the reason why I'm focusing on this is twofold. One is the box I want to have done as kind of as soon as possible, because I'm going to start wanting to use that in some marketing materials and kind of advertise. Here's the box cover, and I have some plans about that. We'll deal with that in a future episode, marketing and whatnot. And the board, I want to start getting some playtests done and with a better looking board, because you'll see soon. I'll show you all the warts and everything from what I've got going on, but the board I have is pretty ugly. It's just, I only make things that are they're very functional, but they're very clip arty and yucky, and I've never had to worry about that before. So now I do, because I'm the publisher. So that was the top two things for my artist so far, is to work on the box cover and then the board, so we can get that going. That's it for this week. We'll see. You might have another one this week, because there's a lot going on, and I'm going to get behind in my weeks if I don't kind of double up a few of these. So we'll see if we can get another one done this week. All right, thanks so much.